the famous spanking scene that everyone was talking about, and adjusting your expectations about time period. How difficult is that to do when you're writing, going back and forth between time periods and mores of the time?
It's not difficult for me at all. It's sort of difficult for Claire on occasion. But I was a research professor. That's why I chose to write historical fiction for my practice book, because I knew how to use a library. So it's just not a problem to slip into the 18th century time frame. I read a lot of stuff that's written by 18th century writers. I understand how they think and what was going on that made them think that way.
And have you caught anything as a consultant where you're like, that one doesn't belong there?
Yeah. Occasionally that's what I'm for, because I know a whole lot more about 18th century Scotland than any of them do, for good reason. I've spent the last 23 years writing this stuff, whereas they're all pretty new to it. They do a really good job, but every once in a while I'll read something in a script and I'll say, well, I see what you're trying to do with this scene, but you can't do it that way because, this wouldn't actually have existed in 18th century Scotland. Like the wool walking scene, where Claire falls in with the women and they're mashing the wet wool back and forth. That was originally, as in the script, a scene where she's strolling through a village of cobblestoned houses and so forth, and she gets invited into a house by some woman, and they are playing bridge and drinking tea, and I said, no. And so I told them what it would be like, and I said, it was really hard scrabble life in the 18th century, especially for a woman. They worked dawn to dark. I said, but I can see you want her to be embraced by this feminine society for a little bit and have the nice break from these raunchy men that she's traveling with. And you could do that by having her help with what chores they would actually be doing. And so I told them specifically about wool walking and the traditional songs. And I said, that's a very intimate kind of thing. And so they promptly went off to the Highland Folk Museum and found reenactors who would do that. It was just fabulous. Yeah.
What are you happiest about with the adaptation? Moving from the book to
how faithful it is, and at the same time, what a good adaptation it is. Because, when I'm writing a novel, I'm God. I can have climaxes and low points any place I want, and they can't really do that because they're limited to 55 minutes at a time. And that 55 minutes has to have its own little story arc. It has to be thematically unified and come down in a satisfying place. Whereas, the book isn't that rhythm at all. So they do what they call break script, which basically means they take the book apart and they have little signs, little magnetic pieces with all the different scenes and partial scenes on them. They have a list of all the lines of dialogue separate from the book, and they shuffle the pieces around. They say, well, we could do this, and then we could have this happen over here, but we can't use that part of it, so let's put that back over here, and then we need to write a little bit to explain how we got back to there. So it's fascinating to watch, and they do just a fabulous job. I'm really impressed.
And if you could go back to the past and talk to yourself right before you started writing Outlander, what would you tell us to yourself?
I don't think I'd do anything differently. Yeah, it's kind of always been my motto, do the best you can every day. That's all the only way I know how.
You have a lot more male fans now because of the show, right?
Yes, I think that's very gratifying. I'm thrilled.
Surprised?
No, I wasn't, because the books have never been women's fiction, let alone romance novels. And yet, the way publishing works, especially before Amazon.com and online publishing and all that, it had to have a label that would let you put it on a shelf in a bookstore. And romance was by far the biggest market that the books could conceivably fit in. They fit in 5 or 6 different genres. And nowadays, if you search any of those genres on Amazon, it will pop right up for you. So I've had steadily increasing male readership as they encounter it in a context where they feel safe in reading it. But putting it on TV is much more effective.